Imagine a Mercedes A-Class hatch with a little extra practicality and a more adventurous outlook, and you'll have this car in mind, the brand's GLA class compact crossover. It's the company's answer to more premium offerings in this growing fashion-conscious segment, and has been engineered with the kind of thoroughness you'd expect from the three-pointed star. According to Mercedes, this GLA class model is ready to take you where no one has ever gone before. It's certainly taking its brand into a market segment it's never seen before, that of the compact crossover. You'll be familiar with these Qashqai class cars by now, ruggedized family hatchbacks on steroids that don't have the off-piste capability of a Freelander-style compact SUV because most buyers don't want it. Mercedes has developed a C-Class based GLK model for those that do. Everyone else, in search of a Focus-sized car bearing a premium badge and an expeditionary mindset, is being targeted by this GLA, the fourth of 5 models to be spun off the platform the Stuttgart brand uses for all its compact cars. It's very late to the party in this particular segment. BMW's X1 has been plying its trade here since 2009, with Audi's similarly targeted Q3 on sale since 2011. This GLA class, in contrast, didn't make it to market until early 2014, but compensated for its tardiness with claims of practicality and efficiency good enough to put these established rivals in the shade. Sounds promising. Let's put this car to the test. A car that essentially is a family hatchback is likely to have the dynamic attitude of a family hatchback. A model that, in contrast, is designed as a proper RAV4 or Freelander-style compact SUV is never going to feel as sharp, no matter how compromised its Rubicon Trail pretensions might be. So, if you like your driving, you'll give thanks that this GLA isn't setting out to rival RAV4s, or indeed Audi Q5s, BMW X3s or Range Rover Evokes come to that. Mercedes has designed a C-Class based GLK model to do that, which frees this car to be a proper Qashqai class compact crossover, or to put it another way, to offer pretty much all the handling brio you'd get from the A-Class hatch it's designed upon, with pretty much none of the downsides. In fact, everyone but truly committed petrol heads will probably find this a much nicer steer than its Stuttgart stablemate. The major dynamic issue with the A-Class is its rather over-firm ride, something this GLA manages to do without, thanks to additional spring travel, more forgiving spring rates, and higher aspect ratio tyres. The result is a smoother ride that's especially noticeable on the poorly tarmacked urban surfaces where this car will be spending most of its life. I'd feared that a penalty would be exacted for this composure when cornering at higher speeds, especially given that this car can have a ride height up to 59mm higher than an A-Class. As it happens, this thing manages the twisty stuff very well, and roll is decently controlled. Though, to be fair, I'm sampling this GLA here in its optimum spec for this type of thing, with lowered sport suspension and the brand's dynamic handling package that sharpens up the steering. Yes, it could still do with a bit more feel at the helm, but the artificially assisted rack weights up with even progression and inspires confidence. When it comes to drive traction and transmission, much will depend on engine choice. Mercedes has developed a 154 brake horsepower 1.6 litre petrol engine for this car, but here the emphasis is firmly on a 2.1 litre diesel lineup that begins with the two-wheel drive only 136 brake horsepower GLA 200 CDI. Now, you'll need this variant if you want the choice of auto or manual transmission, since it's an auto-only regime further up the range. Regardless of your gearbox preference, this base diesel model makes 62 miles an hour in around 10 seconds dead, en route to 127 miles an hour. Should you wish for more performance than that, or want a GLA fitted with the brand's 4MATIC all-wheel drive setup, you'll probably find yourself ending up in the variant that I'm trying here, the GLA 220 CDI diesel. With 170 braked horses to call upon, this version has a useful extra turn of speed, dispatching the 62 mile an hour benchmark in 8.3 seconds en route to 134 miles an hour, despite having to carry around the extra weight of four-wheel drive hardware that can send up to 50% of the engine's power to the rear wheels for improved cornering exit traction. The 211 brake horsepower GLA 250 petrol variant also takes the auto 4MATIC route and should feel pleasantly rapid, delivering 62 miles an hour in 7.1 seconds on the way to 143 miles an hour. Rather more than pleasantly rapid is the frankly certifiable GLA 45 AMG, a car that rocks up with 355 brake horsepower beneath its bonnet. Its 2-litre petrol engine and 4MATIC all-wheel drive catapults you to 62 miles an hour in just 4.8 seconds, which makes this model nearly a second faster than its direct rival, the Audi RSQ3. On the way to a maximum velocity we can only guess at, given that the car is artificially restrained at 155 miles an hour. Just to put that into context, we're talking here of faster acceleration than you get from a V10 engine BMW M5 or a Ferrari 512 supercar. There's something faintly comical about that sort of power shoehorned into a tiny crossover. And off-road? Well, you might think that trying to take a car like this one into the wilds will probably result in a lot of pointing and laughing, followed by a muddy trudge to find a tractor and a rope. Again, though, this Mercedes has a few surprises up its sleeve. While I'm not going to pretend this GLA to be able to get you to places that would strand a Freelander, it's certainly not as hopeless as you might expect. I can think of a lot of crossovers with a standard ride height lower than the 170mm boasted by a conventional GLA, though most buyers will probably negate that advantage by specifying the 15mm lower sports suspension package I have here. Go the other way though and jack it up by around 30mm with the optional off-road setup, and you could probably get a surprisingly long way in this car, provided you didn't mind scraping it a bit. The short wheelbase and wheel at each corner design certainly lends itself towards the sort of approach, breakover and departure angles that will get you out of a tight spot. The kind of place where you'd really appreciate the 4MATIC drive system's ability to direct up to 100% of drive to front or rear wheels, or any proportion in between, according to the levels of available grip. Though Mercedes sees this GLA as part of its SUV portfolio, there's nothing very SUV about the way it looks. Inevitably, given the kind of car this is, the aesthetics do without the genre's cruder touches. Things like an upright windscreen, a bluff front end, or bumpers like railway sleepers. You might expect that. Buyers might, though, be more surprised to find this design also doing without the sort of styling cues common to the kind of far less rugged Qashqai class crossover models this GLA is really designed to target. Mercedes prefers to leave the choice and the cost of adding things like faux skid plates, chunkier bumpers and plastic-cladded side sills to the customer. At first glance, a sportier variant like this one really doesn't look very much different from the A-Class hatchback it's based upon, even though it's actually 127mm longer, 24mm narrower and 59mm taller. Partly that's because the 50mm of ground clearance that would usually set this GLA apart from its lesser stablemate has here been reduced by a sports suspension setup, lowering the car by 15mm. To go the other way and add an off-road styling pack with an extra 30mm of raised ride height over the standard car would certainly return a more rugged look, but to be honest, the cosmetic additions included would be more likely to reduce your off-road ability than enhance it. In other words, you ought to be able to spend your money a bit more wisely. So it's probably better to go with the flow and simply see this as an A-Class with an added dose of attitude, a roll much closer to its comfort zone thanks to this raked back windscreen and a front end that sports these big air intakes, these flutes in the bonnet and these smart smeared back headlights. Smart GLA specific touches include the way the stylists have teased out these wheel arches, adding muscularity to the look, and the sleek integration of these aluminium roof rails. In profile, as with the A-Class, there's an awful lot going on, with two prominent lines sweeping backwards from the front wing, one rising from just above the door sill and another falling from just above the wheel arch. Now, along with the rising belt line, they culminate just above muscular rear wheel arches, emphasising a feeling of width at the rear end, heightened by the curved rear window and the sweeping chromed handle between the divided tail lights. Drop inside, and depending on the suspension chosen, you can find yourself sitting up to 80mm higher than you would be in a comparable A-Class model, which means a more commanding view out front from a driving position easily perfected by wide adjustment possibilities for seat and for steering wheel, aided by plentiful head and shoulder room. As with most of Mercedes' current compact models, though, rearward visibility is compromised by the swoopy roof design and the angled tailgate. Hence, perhaps, the decision to equip this car with a reversing camera as standard. That's fine to stand in the gap for you during low-speed manoeuvring, but if this was my car, I'd also want the extra cost blind spot assist and lane keeping assist features to keep an extra eye out for me at speed too. The cabin architecture of all Mercedes smaller models is pretty much identical these days, which fortunately is no bad thing in terms of what you end up with here. So, as with any A or CLA class model, you get the same deeply cowled twin-dial instrument binnacle viewed through a lovely grippy Napa leather-trimmed three-spoke multifunction steering wheel. There are the same 5 chrome-trimmed SLS supercar-style air vents decorating a dash split into upper and lower sections. The upper part's dominated by the iPad-style 5.8-inch freestanding infotainment screen that's been stuck in the middle of it, controlled by a little rotary dial positioned where the handbrake would normally be if it hadn't been replaced by one of those fiddly electronic ones with a switch hidden away beneath the fascia. In terms of look and feel, the materials used don't quite have the rich, deep, hewn from granite feel that you get in an Audi, and there are harder, cheaper plastics if you go looking for them. Overall, though, the finished effect is certainly a step up from anything B&W offers at this level, and as you'd expect from the three-pointed star, build quality is faultless. Overall, I'd say that this is probably the most interesting cabin in the segment, a classy effort with plenty of showroom feel-good factor. In terms of practicality, as well as spacious door bins and a reasonably sized illuminated glove box compartment, there are storage boxes beneath the front seats and a place for your sunglasses in the overhead control panel. And one advantage of choosing an automatic model over a manual car is that the gear shift lever moves to the steering column, which means that you get space for a deep oddments bin and 2 cup holders in the centre console. It's when you move to the rear, though, that you're more likely to realise this car's station in life as a family hatchback-based crossover rather than a Freelander-sized compact SUV. Frankly, it's significantly smaller than one of those, as indeed this car has to be, given that it must sit on the same compact 2,700mm wheelbase as its A-Class design stablemate. These prominent wheel arches mean that access is slightly restricted. And once you're inside, any thoughts of carrying 3 adults are hampered by the rear bench's uninvitingly sculpted middle section and this wide and rather intrusive transmission tunnel. Two passengers will be quite comfortable though, providing they're not tall folk in a GLA whose interior roof height has been lowered by the optional panoramic glass roof. And three children will be more than happy, providing that they don't object to the high rising waistline. One area where the GLA clearly betters the A-Class and its direct rivals is back here in the boot. You get 481 litres of luggage space, a big jump up from the 341 litre total offered by the A-Class and around 60 litres more than you'd get in an Audi Q3 or a BMW X1. These two competitors do reverse this showing when it comes to seats folded capacity. Push forward this 60/40 split folding rear bench, which unfortunately doesn't fold quite flat, and the 1,235 litre total is about 100 litres down on the opposition. But for most, it'll be standard luggage capacity that counts, along with the fact that this cargo bay's square shape, low loading lip and wide tailgate access make loading in heavy objects easy. If you want to extend it, yet still use the rear seat for passengers, a standard load compartment package allows the backrest of the rear seat to be moved to a steeper so-called cargo position, which will gain you around 60 litres. If you need it, there's an integrated ski hatch in the rear bench and an underfloor compartment. Mainstream GLA class buyers looking at 2.1 litre diesel and 2 litre petrol models will need a budget starting from a little over £26,000 and ranging up to just over £31,000. Dedicated followers of the brand, though, can consider paying up to £45,000 for the 45 AMG flagship version. The base GLA 200 CDI diesel variant is only offered in two-wheel drive form and comes with a choice of manual or automatic transmission. Further up the range, you have to have automatic transmission and 4MATIC four-wheel drive. For diesel folk, there's a premium of just over £2,700 to go from a GLA 200 CDI Auto to a comparably specified pokier GLA 220 CDI Auto variant, like the one I have here. Now that sounds reasonable, given that the extra cash gets you four-wheel drive and quite a lot of extra performance. Running costs do also rise quite significantly with this pricier model though, so make sure you've taken that into account. So what kind of value proposition does that represent? To truly understand the answer, of course, you have to fully appreciate what this car is and what it isn't. Let's start with that. To begin with, if you buy into all the go-anywhere lifestyle advertising, it might be tempting to think you can have one of these for the same kind of money you'd pay for, say, a Toyota RAV4 or a Honda CR-V. And that's true, but then those cars are really proper small SUVs. Now, they wouldn't be much good on the Rubicon Trail, but they do have some measure of off-piste prowess. You could conceivably say the same about models like Volvo's XC60 or the Range Rover Evoque, both of which are slightly bigger and will cost you several £1,000s more. A GLA, in contrast, is something much simpler than an SUV, developed instead as one of those Qashqai-like crossovers, a family hatchback in a pair of hiking boots. Virtually all of its basic design is based upon Mercedes' smallest vehicle, the A-Class hatch. The idea being that for a model-for-model premium of around £2,000, buyers of that car can get themselves something more versatile with an extra dose of attitude. Something that can be more easily specified with four-wheel drive too, though in this case that's there for icy mornings rather than muddy trails. Crossover models of this sort seem to be in demand from an increasing number of buyers these days, and many of them want such a car presented like this one, with a bit of extra polish and badge equity. Hence the success of models like the Audi Q3 and the BMW X1, inevitably the two rivals against which this GLA class is directly targeted. You'll find that they both cost similar money to this Mercedes, provided that you remember to price match the Audi and the BMW against a GLA in automatic guises in their pokier petrol and diesel forms, so that you're going to get a proper price match. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is a GLA class model you really want, then you're going to need to know what's included in the asking price. And the answer is a very reasonable spec. Even in least expensive SE trim, you get 18-inch alloy wheels, aluminium roof rails, privacy glass, a chrome-trimmed twin-pipe exhaust, rain-sensing wipers, and a reversing camera. Inside there's man-made Artico leather for the seats and the real Napa stuff, trimming the multifunction steering wheel, plus air conditioning, a trip computer and a DAB radio with Bluetooth, USB and Apple iPod connections. Personally though, I'd be tempted to find the extra £1,000 necessary to upgrade my GLA to the plusher AMG line trim I have here that makes this car feel significantly more special. At this level, the hand of Mercedes' sporting division has been upon the smarter 5-spoke alloy wheels, the body styling kit, the lower suspension and even the floor mats. There's also a dynamic handling package that sharpens up the steering, sports seats, brake calipers with Mercedes-Benz lettering, a sports pedal set, an aluminium trim plus red stitching to lift the interior a notch or two above the norm. And options? Well, I'd want to look at things like the heated seats and cruise control I'd have hoped to see as standard. Then there's the thumping 12-speaker Harman Kardon Logic 7 surround sound audio setup, and maybe even the Night exclusive or AMG exclusive body styling packages. As someone who uses an iPhone, I'd also want the Drive Kit Plus package that would work with a downloadable digital drive style app to integrate my handset into the GLA's infotainment system, connecting me into social networks like Facebook and Twitter. The brand offers a reasonably priced Becker Map Pilot satellite navigation setup too, though a more sophisticated route into SatNav is also available in the form of a command online system that includes HDD 3D navigation with live traffic updates, speed limit assist, linguatronic voice control, an SD memory card slot and a 10 gigabyte music register. You'll need this package to get a neat off-road display that can show you roll, steering and gradient angles, a compass and your selected off-road transmission mode. It's easiest though when specifying a GLA to concentrate on the way that Mercedes has rounded up this car's most important extra cost features into 4 main packages. The first, Executive, gets you power folding mirrors, an auto dimming rear view mirror and an active park assist with Parktronic system to automatically steer you into the tightest spaces. At premium level, bi-xenon headlamps and a powered Easy Pack tailgate are added to that tally, and Premium Plus includes all of these things along with dual zone climate control, a huge panoramic glass sunroof and a clever intelligent light system which adjusts itself to light and driving conditions, the headlamps turning with the bends. In the unlikely event that you're planning to take your GLA out into the wilds, you can also talk to your dealer about the off-road package, which adds an SUV-style body kit and raises the ride height by 30mm. As for safety kit, well, all the expected items are in place. 7 airbags, including a driver's knee bag, anti-whiplash head restraints, Isofix child seat fastenings, a deformable steering column and a pedestrian-friendly bonnet. There are also the usual electronic systems to help with braking and traction, and stability control too, of course, an ESP setup clever enough to help you counter-steer when the car oversteers, and which automatically makes steering corrections when braking on surfaces with different levels of grip. It even compensates for crosswinds and road camber. It's also worth pointing out that all 4MATIC GLA models get DSR downhill speed regulation to ease you down slippery slopes. But as you might expect in this day and age, this car goes a lot further than that. Let's start with the standard stuff and attention assist, a clever feature that monitors your driving reactions to detect drowsiness it'll respond to by prompting you to stop for a restorative coffee. Then there's adaptive brake assist, which primes the brakes if you suddenly come off the throttle and wipes them in wet weather to keep them continually effective. And talking of braking, you also get a collision prevention assist setup. It's like an extra pair of eyes that constantly scans the road in front and behind you for potential collision hazards. If one is detected, it'll warn you and prime the brakes. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the car can brake itself to reduce the severity of any resulting accident. The system also protects against rear-end collisions at speeds of over 4 miles an hour. In other words, it's very clever. Testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents and decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. At higher speeds, collision prevention assist is at its most effective when combined with the extra-cost radar-based adaptive cruise control system Distronic Plus, there to keep you a constantly safe distance in front of and behind other cars in highway traffic. You get Distronic Plus as part of an optional driver's assistance package, which also gives you blind spot assist. That stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake when there's a car in your blind spot, and lane keeping assist to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. It also includes the clever pre-safe anticipatory system that senses an emergency situation early on before automatically pre-tensioning the seat belts, closing the windows, and if fitted, positioning the electric seats into a position for optimum crash survival. Mercedes has worked extremely hard to make this GLA class one of the cheapest cars to run in its class. Efforts aided by the fact that all the engines on offer feature direct injection and turbocharging, plus an eco start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. There's also an eco setting for the 7G DCT 7-speed automatic gearbox, as well as a slippery 0.29 CD drag factor, plus intelligent management of engine ancillaries like the alternator, the oil feed and the water pump, and low rolling resistance tyres. As a result, it's hard to argue with the numbers generated by this GLA, figures that aren't very different from those of its Mercedes A-Class design stablemate, despite this car's extra 40 kilograms of weight. Manual or automatic, the entry-level GLA 200 CDI diesel delivers the sort of returns more usually associated with a Super Mini. 62.8 miles from a gallon of diesel on the combined cycle and 119 grams per kilometre of carbon dioxide. Now, to put those readings into perspective, they'll see you going 5 or 6 miles further on every gallon and putting out 10 to 15 grams per kilometre less CO2 than you would in a rival Audi Q3 2-litre TDI 140 or BMW X1 S-Drive 18D. Clearly, opting for a more powerful engine with all-wheel drive and an automatic gearbox is going to put a dent into those numbers. But even this GLA 220 CDI 4MATIC returns 55.4 miles to the gallon and emits just 132 grams per kilometre. That's nearly 10% better than you'd get from a rival BMW X1 X-Drive 2-litre D Auto, and around 15% better than the kind of directly comparable Audi Q3 2-litre TDI 177 Quattro S-Tronic model that would pitch a company car driver 2 tax bands further up. Do you see a theme here? What else? Well, for some reason, insurance groupings for this GLA are a lot higher than they are for the equivalent Audi or BMW. You're looking at Group 25 for the GLA 200 CDI, Group 28 or 29 for this GLA 220 CDI, and Groups 33 or 34 for the petrol GLA 250. In compensation, residuals look strong, and the Mercedes aftercare provision is also good, with a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty and a very cheap optional service care package that spreads the cost of routine servicing. This guarantees the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services and covers the cost of recommended service items such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. Freedom, Mercedes says, is contagious. Desire for compact crossover models of this kind certainly is, even if they cost as much as this one. It doesn't directly compete with RAV4 or Freelander style SUVs, but given that it costs the same sort of money, I can see a number of people who'd previously have simply settled for another such CR-V style soft roader being tempted by what's on offer here. Some cheaper crossover models of this kind seem a little crude in comparison with this GLA. Like them, it's essentially a family hatchback in a pair of hiking boots, but its transformation to meet that need has here been completed with a silken thoroughness typical of the three-pointed star. That doesn't extend to any really serious off-road capability, but then for many buyers, such a thing is neither wanted nor needed. Appropriate then for this car to be so visually subtle in its expeditionary pretensions. True, similar claims are being made in this segment by the BMW X1 and Audi Q3 rivals this car is being directly pitched against. But these are competitors with higher running costs, smaller boots and asking prices that are no cheaper. You can see then why Mercedes is confident this GLA will prevail against them. It's arguably the best compact car the brand makes, and that makes it very significant indeed.